Surveillance in New York City has reached unprecedented levels, with billions spent on tools that track ordinary people's daily lives. New York Governor Kathy Hochul endorses Zohran Mamdani for mayor, but the socialist label sparks national concern for Democrats. The politics of Charlie Kirk's accused assassin remain unclear. Was he influenced by the far left, the far right, or both, or neither? President Trump demands George Soros be jailed, reviving authoritarian-style attacks on the philanthropist behind Open Society. And Elon Musk tells a far-right rally, violence is coming. But decades of data show most political killings do, in fact, at least in the United States, come from the left. Welcome to Filtered with TJ Walker. Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining me today. This is Filtered. Special hello to our friends watching on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitch, Instagram, and all of our friends on TikTok. Thanks so much to the more than 2,000 people joining us live on TikTok. Hope you can come back today. If you're new to the show, here's what we do. We look at typically 5 of the biggest topics, news stories of the day, things that have happened in the last 24 hours a day. 24 hours. It's not a history show. And then we analyze these stories. We filter them through the lens of communication skills, personal development skills, all with the goal of making you more successful, more productive in your personal life and your professional life. That's what we're all about. My pledge to you is if you spend some time with me, typically about an hour, 7 days a week, you'll not only know more about the news, but you'll also become more successful yourself. That's what we're about. Let's dive in. Living in a real-world minority report. According to the New York Times, the New York Police Department has quietly built a massive surveillance system that tracks the daily lives of millions of New Yorkers, whether they've committed a crime or not. The department has spent more than $3 billion on tools that monitor where you go, who you meet, and even what you post online. Elizabeth Daniel Vasquez, a former Brooklyn public defender, warns that this digital time machine turns ordinary life into permanent evidence. Teenagers in public housing can end up in a gang database, 99% of people of color, just for posting photos with friends. The New York Police Department seized more than 24,000 cell phones last year alone, feeding data back into the system. Civil rights advocates, including New York public advocate Humane Williams, says these tools erode basic freedoms. And with the Trump administration ordering federal agencies to merge data systems, fears are growing that this surveillance could be weaponized far beyond New York. As Vasquez puts it, nothing would be more American than a law that confirms we each own our own information. Okay, so what's the real message here? Data collection, surveillance is getting more pervasive in every aspect of society. New York City, supposedly a bastion of liberal tolerance, is at the forefront of monitoring everything you do, every place you go, everything you see, everything you look at. And yeah, crime is down, which is great. But what happens if the federal government, for example, bans all abortion? And now the government can force New York City to hand over data showing, oh, you went to Planned Parenthood and came out a few pounds lighter, you go to prison. Let's dig a little deeper. I'm not one of these who thinks that all surveillance is bad. I have personally benefited from the fact that crime is much lower in New York City. I used to live there full time. I still spend a fair amount of time in New York. So I like the fact that I can sort of walk around knowing that crime is really low. And in fact, not that long ago, a good friend of mine and work associate spent time on a grand jury in Manhattan. And she said, well, TJ, it was kind of the easiest job ever, rubber stamping, because the prosecutor would come in and said, oh, we think this person committed a crime. Here's the allegation. Oh, and by the way, here's 10 different video cameras all showing the person actually committing the mugging, the robbery, whatever the crime was. And it was simply irrefutable evidence. So every time it was rubber stamp, indict, 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 and convict, 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 went on a jury. So I don't want to be some absolutist here and say, oh, the government can never, ever be trusted. And let's go back to the 1990s, early 1990s, when there was relatively few monitoring cameras in New York City. And you know what? There were 2,000 murders, 2,200 murders in 1990. I'm willing to give up a little personal freedom in order to not be murdered. I think that is an acceptable trade-off, and I'm assuming a lot of you do as well. But when does it go too far? Because it's one thing to say, okay, with the current way politics is structured in America, I'm more worried about violent crime than I am about the government doing something evil. Well, if you had told me that 10 years ago, I'd say sure. If you told me that even 2 years ago, I would say sure. Now, I'm not so sure. Now, you may have a different political orientation. You may say you were worried 3 years ago and you're not worried now. Okay. The point is, all of us at some point have a vision of a government where we do not trust them to know every single thing about our lives, every place we've ever been, anyone we've ever associated with, being used against us in a court of law or in the court of public opinion. Because as we've seen recently, when the government's out to get you, they can just make allegations and push things out to the media and try and convict you in the media. And that is going to be no fun at all. Now, we've seen countless celebrities get wrapped into this Jeffrey Epstein thing. Some of them clearly knew what he was up to, what he was about, and knew his record and should be shamed. But there are plenty of other people who, frankly, didn't know anything about him. We're told, here's a guy who's rich, who likes to contribute to causes like yours. Can you come to a cocktail party, maybe at his house, where there are 200 other people? You shake hands once, maybe get a check to support your charity and leave, and you never even thought about it again. And now here we are 10 years later, and you're a part of some big scandal. I do have a little bit of sympathy for people like that, because I can tell you, nobody I know vets every single person. Nobody you know vets every single person they've ever associated with. Yes, if you live in a small village and you've known the same 150 people your whole life and you never go more than 50 miles away, yeah, I guess it's possible. If someone has a bad reputation in your town, you just always shun them. But for anyone living in a big city or New York City, or anyone who's active in national life and national philanthropy or science or raising money for a university or a foundation, to simply say, I'm never, ever going to go to a party without knowing the background information about every single person, you have to be a hermit. That's not really plausible. And yet, is that what we're going to require? Is that what a sane person is going to have to do, given the reality of what's happening in New York City and also other cities, metropolitan areas around the country, where we live in a surveillance state? Now, here in the US, we hear all the time about in China how there's this surveillance state and they're rating you constantly. But it's happening in the United States too. I'll be honest with you. Unlike a lot of pundits who says, this is always wrong and this is 100% right and I'm outraged, I'm going to be upfront with you. I don't know what the perfect line is as far as having security cameras with government access to it in public. Certainly, we don't want them inside your own private house. But again, with the government's ability to access your cell phone, that is gone as well. The assumption of privacy. We're going to be following this story as it comes from time to time. I want to thank you again for joining me. Thanks for Janice stopping by to say hello. I appreciate your comments. If you are watching live, I always take the time to look out at the comments. It says, Janice says, that's an in-depth overview of a surveillance state. Thanks, TJ. You are welcome. I try to bring you what I think is a curated list of the combination of the most important stories that have happened in the last 24 hours and the most interesting stories that maybe are not front page stories, but are in the news and are journalistically sourced from reputable news-based organizations. Put that out for you as a summary, and then together we have a conversation and try to piece together what really makes sense from an individual standpoint. What can we learn as individuals on how to communicate better, on personal development skills that will make us navigate our way through this modern world we live in? More in a moment. Filtered is brought to you by the following. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Want to become a better speaker, leader, or communicator? Start with the TJ Walker Success Library. It's 5 of my most practical books, covering everything from public speaking to media interviews and persuasive messaging, all for only $9.95. I've trained presidents and Fortune 500 CEOs, and now you can get the same wisdom in a fast, affordable format. Go to tjwalker.com/books and download your copies instantly. Thanks for listening. If you like today's episode, you'll love my online courses at MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Check them out now and level up your skills. Democrats split on Mamdani. According to the New York Times and Politico, New York Governor Kathy Hochul has endorsed Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani in the mayoral race, praising him as, quote, a leader focused on affordability and someone who will stand up to President Trump's extreme agenda. Her words. She admitted they don't agree on everything, but said he has the courage, urgency, and optimism New York City needs. Mamdani is a self-described Democratic socialist from Queens. He's already won backing from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Senator Bernie Sanders, Senator Chris Van Hollen, and the Working Families Party. But top Democrats like Senator Chuck Schumer, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, and Hakeem Jeffries, the House Democratic leader, have held back. Jeffries praised Mamdani's focus on affordability, but questioned how his ideas would actually work. Others worry about proposals such as a $30 minimum wage and government-run grocery stores, and about his past statements on Israel and Gaza. Looming over all of this is the socialist label. Polling shows just 39% of Americans view socialism positively, while 57% view it negatively. Among Republicans, support drops to 14%. And among independents, only about 38% are favorable toward this socialism label. Democrats may embrace Mamdani, but national leaders fear Republicans will use this label to paint the entire party as socialist, a potential liability in swing districts. Okay, so what's the real message here when it comes to Democratic leaders endorsing Mamdani? This is a delicate tightrope because, yes, he won fair and square in the Democratic primary. He ran as a Democrat, but it's complicated because he uses the label Democratic Socialist, and socialism scares people. It makes people think of Fidel Castro. It makes people think of breadlines in the Soviet Union. So this is a tough call for any Democratic official. And if you think otherwise, you're not having to run for re-election. Let's dig a little deeper here. I do feel for Democrats here because let's look at things through the lens of another party. If someone were running for the Republican nomination for mayor and they won the nomination as a Republican, but they self-identify as a Republican white nationalist, but they won the primary, and let's say they are favored to win the general election, that would be a real dilemma for a lot of Republicans. Do they want to officially endorse something that says white nationalism. Now, I'm not equating white nationalism with socialism. But I do think that if you're honest and fair, as I try to be here, and objective, you can see both labels have high negative ratings with majorities of the populace. So in that sense, there is some symmetry there. So this is a tough call, because here's the thing. If Mamdani wins, and by all accounts, he is ahead of the polls and is likely to be the next mayor of New York City, he is arguably the highest ranking elected Democratic official in the entire United States. So there's simply no denying that he's a leader of the party. So let's break it down to practical levels. If you are now a Democrat running in a swing district in rural/suburban Pennsylvania or in Texas, and it's a district that swings back and forth between Republicans and Democrats, and this is your chance. You think you can win. You're a strong candidate. Let's say you are, someone respected in the community. You've started a business. You're successful. You have a beautiful family, and you served in the military. You're a textbook example of everything the Democratic Party is looking for to win a swing district. You now have to face a barrage of ads. Let's say I'm the candidate, or let's say Smithers is the candidate. You now have to face a barrage of, because I'm not running for anything, believe me. You now have to face a barrage of ads saying candidate Smithers is a part of the Socialist Democratic Party, and he stands with Mamdani, especially if you endorsed him. But even if you didn't, it's a part of your party. So if you want socialism, if you want 1970s style Fidel Castro Cuba coming to our rural Pennsylvania, then by all means, vote for Smithers, the Democrat. That's a real problem. That is the sort of thing that keeps Democratic candidates awake at night. That's the sort of thing that keeps the poobahs at the Democratic Party headquarters in Washington awake at night. And this is why you see someone like Chuck Schumer, Kirsten Gillibrand, Hakeem Jeffries not too excited about Mamdani. Now, here's the odd thing, or here's the thing I think that most people forget. If he simply didn't use the word socialist, he could advance all the other policies he has and just call himself a centrist Democrat, and we wouldn't have any of this controversy. Now, he is who he is. He gets to define himself. He doesn't come to me or any other consultant and say, hey, pick my label. But some of the things that are written off as outlandish, bizarre, crazy. He's talking about a $30 an hour minimum wage. That's crazy, according to some observers and pundits. Here's the thing. When President Nixon was president in 1969, if you factor in inflation and how our economy and the currency has changed, they had a $30 an hour minimum wage in 1969. Didn't seem to destroy the economy, didn't seem to turn us into a socialist paradise. It's just that the minimum wage has not kept up since 1969. So to say that someone is beyond the pale simply because they want the minimum wage to be what it was under Republican Richard Nixon, that lacks credulity, I think, in any fair-minded person's view. Now, he's talking about government-run grocery stores. To me, that doesn't sound like a good idea. But again, we live in a time when dear leader in Washington is saying we want government-run chip factories, taking a position and a 10% stake in Intel. We have a government in Washington asking for kickbacks from various companies, wanting to control how a company like Cracker Barrel can market itself. I mean, that is true socialism. Not a peep from the people who normally complain about socialism. In fact, they actually endorse government activity in that state. The state where I'm broadcasting from today in Florida, we have a so-called conservative Republican MAGA supporter, Governor DeSantis, who routinely tries to tell the Disney Corporation how it should run its business. So we have all sorts of socialism creeping into various aspects of our economy. By my estimation, it's coming mostly these days from the right. The other thing everyone forgets about is the mayor of New York City, yes, does have some power. It's a strong mayoralship, but things like raising taxes, he can't do without approval from the state legislature and the governor, and they've already said they're not going to do it. So as a practical matter, it's virtually impossible for any Democratic mayor to govern further to the left than pretty much any other mayor of New York City. So part of me think this is a little bit, a lot made out of nothing. But when it comes to symbolism, when it comes to messaging, I do think that this is a big problem for Democrats. The socialist label is tainted. It's viewed extraordinarily negatively. And Mamdani is not backing away from the label. He's not saying, oh, that was a youthful indiscretion. Just call me a moderate Democrat. He's not doing that. That would make life a lot easier for other Democrats in his party. But so far, that's not happening. It'll be interesting to see how this shakes out. Right now, all the polls show that he will win, regardless of whether other candidates drop out. He's going to win the general election. He will be the next mayor of New York City. Those of you looking from outside of the country, New York City is viewed as a liberal, democratic, left of center city. However, this is the very same city that had Rudy Giuliani serve not one, not two terms. And full disclosure, I actually voted for his reelection, the Republican Giuliani, when he ran for reelection in the late 1990s. So it's not a city that just knee-jerk only votes for Democrats. They voted for Mike Bloomberg, who at the time was a Republican. So Republicans can win in New York City, but no one anticipates the current Republican nominee for governor, Curtis Sliwa, to win because he is considered a bit of a joke. More in a moment. Filtered is brought to you by the following. Get the deeper takes I don't post anywhere else. Subscribe now at substack.com/@TJWalkerSuccess and stay in the loop. For years, people have asked how they could get one-on-one coaching from me inexpensively. Well, now you can, anytime, anywhere with the TJ Walker AI clone. It's like having me in your pocket, ready to help you prep for a speech, polish a pitch, or calm your nerves before a big meeting. You talk to it. It responds like I would, based on my real-world coaching of thousands of leaders and communicators. Check it out at tjwalker.ai. It's not just smart, it's personal. Was the Kirk shooter far left, far right, or something else? The political identity of Tyler Robinson, the 22-year-old accused of assassinating conservative activist Charlie Kirk, remains clouded in contradictions. Utah Governor Spencer Cox told the Wall Street Journal that Robinson was, quote, deeply indoctrinated with leftist ideology, pointing to bullet casings engraved with anti-fascist slogans and lyrics from the Italian resistance anthem Bella Ciao. And the Utah governor was someone I praised on this show just yesterday for his calls for calmness and people settling down. I may have to reevaluate that. But Robinson's family and background paint a different picture. His grandmother told reporters that the entire family is made up of Trump-loving Republicans. And public records show both parents registered in the GOP. He grew up white, he is still white, Mormon, and Christian in a heavily Republican town within a solidly Republican state. His voter registration was unaffiliated and inactive, suggesting little direct engagement with progressive politics, left-wing politics, or right-wing politics. One bullet casing allegedly mocked gay people, Now, that's a message far more consistent with homophobic rhetoric on the far right than with any leftist ideology. Analysts note that extremist subcultures often blend symbols, memes, and slogans across the political spectrum, muddying ideological labels. Whether his influences came from the far left, the far right, or a toxic mix of both, the result was political violence. And leaders from Donald Trump to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez warn it risks fueling even more chaos ahead. Okay, what's the real message here? People who are quick to say the guy who killed Kirk is a part of the far left are just making up stuff. They're stirring the pot, trying to get people angry, get more hits, and get more applause and likes. They don't know what they're talking about. For that matter, anyone who says they know categorically that this guy was just influenced by far-right ideology, MAGA ideology, and gun-loving ideology, they don't really know what they're talking about either. Let's go a little bit deeper here. So I think it's perfectly fine and legitimate to wonder what inspired someone who seemed normal. I mean, here was a guy who had a 4.0 grade point average in high school, seemed to be what most people would consider a good-looking, normal American kid doing well in school, got accepted to college, and then something went wrong. He dropped out his first semester. Something turned dark. I don't know what it is. And anyone who tells you they know 100% of what flipped this guy, they're trying to sell you something. They are, in my professional opinion, bunco artists at this stage. Now, more data may come out. He may leave a manifesto and say, well, I started reading this guy's philosophy book and this manifesto, and I immersed myself. And we may find he spends all of his time in certain cells on Reddit that twisted his. It's possible, but at this point, nobody knows. And I'm recording this and going live to you right now on Monday, September 15th, 2025. So I think it's a bit much, especially for someone in national leadership, to just say, okay, this guy who killed Kirk was influenced by the radical left. You know, when you just start making up something, when you say, here's something bad that happened, I don't care about the facts. I'm just going to say it's the fault of this group over here I hate. That's not what democracy is about. Democracies can't really flourish in an environment like that. Now, am I saying you should be censored and not allowed to say it? No, I'm not saying that. But you shouldn't be treated as a serious person. And this country used to have a time when, whether it was President Reagan, other presidents of different parties, when there was a national crisis, presidents realized that was a time to calm people down, to reduce tensions, to try to do everything you could to make people less angry, less likely to go out and grab a pitchfork or any other weapon and attacking people who are not like you. Sadly, we don't have that going on in this country right now. So let me be fair, and I am a sensible centrist here. I'm not here grinding a political axe. I'm going to give it to you straight. There were, in fact, some anti-fascist slogans on the bullet casings, allegedly. That's what's being reported. I haven't seen them personally. So yes, that would suggest that there was some kind of left-leaning ideological influence on this young man in his crazed bid and successful bid to assassinate Charlie Kirk. But there were also mentions there that if you can read this, you're gay, which is sort of an it is an anti-gay slur. Folks, the people on the left are not supposed to be anti-gay, so that's inconsistent. And it is interesting to me that people automatically assume, they give the benefit of the doubt to their home team. You can say the left do that occasionally. But here's a guy who grew up steeped in right-wing MAGA culture. he grew up with guns. His father's a police officer. Every member of his family, his extended family, according to his grandma, they're all Republicans who voted for Trump. His community is pretty much lily white and Republican voting. His state is pretty much lily white and Republican voting. It's a state heavily influenced by a particular religion. And I'm not here to mock religions today, but it's the Mormon religion, which they consider themselves Christians. Many Christians don't, but we'll leave that debate for another day. It's run by an organization, a church, that has very, very conservative worldviews. Let's not forget the Mormon church, until the 1970s, didn't consider Black people to be human beings with souls. They changed that, to their credit, I guess. But this is the culture he grew up in, that he was marinated in. This is what he heard his whole life. Guns, good. Republicans, good. Trump is good. And now he committed this atrocity. And again, I'll say what I did the first day when this news broke. I abhor violence. I abhor assassinations wherever they are. My sympathies to the Kirk family. I'm in no way mocking anything that happened. In fact, I don't know anyone across the spectrum who is of any prominence who has, in fact, mocked this tragedy. So this is what I think we all need to be careful of. It's human nature to look for confirmation bias. Something bad happened. Somebody did something you don't like. And you may be presented with 12 facts that say this person is all kind of like you and grew up in an environment like you. And here's one fact that says, here's some contact this person had with somebody you don't like, a tribe, a team you don't like. It is human nature to glom on to that one fact and say, aha, I knew it. I knew these were bad guys. I knew they ruined this guy. And you're lying to yourself. We've all done it. I've done it. It is human nature. And what I'm asking for, in order to make you more successful, frankly, in your job, in your personal life, beware of this confirmation bias. And I'm going to go on the record. I have no idea whether this killer, this assassin, was influenced by right-wing ideology, left-wing ideology, or any ideology. It may be the ideology of guns are great, violence is great, and I'm a crazy person that thinks life is like a video game. That, to me, is as plausible as anything else that's influencing him. So let's all just take a breath a moment before we automatically assume that somebody who has a different political principle than yours is somehow guilty of indoctrinating someone to commit acts of murder. More in a moment. Filtered is brought to you by the following. You don't need a new degree. You don't need another expensive coach. You need the right communication habits, and I'll teach them to you in just a few minutes a day. At MediaTrainingWorldwide.com, I've created the most comprehensive library of online communication and personal development courses anywhere. You'll learn public speaking, media training, persuasion, executive presence, and more. These are the same methods I've taught to world leaders, but now they're affordable and accessible to everyone. You can start for free and upgrade anytime. Go now to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Confidence isn't a personality trait, it's a skill, and it's trainable. Most people can't afford a full-time coach, and even if you could, good luck finding one who's available when you need them. That's why I created the TJ Walker AI clone. It's built on my 40-plus years of real-world coaching and training. You get my exact advice, style, and frameworks instantly. Ask it how to handle a tough question, get feedback on your elevator pitch, rehearse your next big talk. This is the next generation of communication coaching. It's smarter than an app, more personal than a course, and always ready. Start using it today at tjwalker.ai. You'll wonder how you ever did without it. Want to become Welcome back to Filtered. I'm your host, TJ Walker. If you're new to the show, this is where we look at top news stories of the day, business stories, technology stories, and culture stories, and then analyze them, filter them through the lens of communication skills and personal development skills, all with the goal of making you better. If you are watching this on TikTok, thank you today, on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, X, almost any platform, I want to thank you. Please leave a comment, talk about what you like, don't like, ask questions, answer questions, participate. If you're listening on any podcast platform, thanks for doing so. We're only in our second week. We haven't even gone into week 3 yet for this show. So we're brand new. So it's especially helpful if you can leave a review and leave any comments. Thanks so much. Now let's dive into issue 4. Trump calls for Soros' arrest, but where are the facts? In an NBC interview, President Trump escalated his attacks on billionaire philanthropist George Soros, declaring he should, quote, be put in jail. Trump accused Soros and his sons of funding violent protest and threatened RICO charges, allegations that echo long-standing right-wing attacks but have never been substantiated. Figures like Hungary's Viktor Orban have also targeted Soros for years, painting him as a shadowy villain, largely because he champions an open society, democratic institutions, human rights, and free expression, values that clash with authoritarian leaders. The record shows that Soros has not been charged with any crimes. Instead, through his Open Society foundations, he has donated more than $30 billion to causes such as education, public health, independent journalism, and pro-democracy groups around the world. A Holocaust survivor who went on to become one of history's most successful investors, Soros built his fortune in finance, and then redirected much of it to philanthropy. Trump's rhetoric puts him in line with dictators who smear Soros for what he represents, not for anything he's done illegally. Okay, what's the real message here? When Donald Trump says, arrest George Soros, what he's really saying is, I'm afraid of anyone who wants openness in society. I'm afraid for anyone who actually believes in democracy. I'm afraid of a guy like Soros, who had to fight for his life in Nazi Germany, became one of the richest men in the world, not because daddy gave it to him, but through hard work. And he wants to share that with other people. I'm very afraid. That is Trump's message. That's the message of every dictator around the world, which is why you see George Soros transformed into a boogeyman. Let's dig a little deeper here. When you say someone is a part of the far left, let's define our terms here. The far left is supposed to mean you want communism and you want big government running anything. Here's a guy who's one of the most successful practitioners of free market enterprise in the history of the world. He's worth billions and billions and billions of dollars. He is arguably certainly one of the top, if not number one, then top 5, top 10 investors in the history of capitalism. He's the poster boy for a successful capitalist. And he's simply trying to get rid of authoritarian regimes. He's not in favor of communism. He fought communism when it was tough and when it was controlling so many things in Eastern Europe. He's fighting authoritarianism as it has come to power in places like Hungary. And he's helped so many people. I mean, here's the irony. He actually gave a full scholarship to Viktor Orban to get him through college. And Viktor Orban returned the favor by bashing him, trashing him, and turning him into a boogeyman. And it's absolutely despicable. Again, let's look more at Soros's career. He escaped Nazi-occupied Hungary, built a legendary finance career, has given most of his wealth away. He's funded anti-apartheid movements in South Africa. Oh, that makes him a bad man, right? Oh, that really makes him a part of the loony left, being against apartheid. He's given scholarships for Eastern Europeans after the Cold War, hoping to educate people who've been traumatized by the Soviet Union. He gives a lot of pandemic relief in poor nations. And he's given money to journalistic organizations that try to present facts about powerful institutions, governments, businesses in those countries. That's really what's caused him to create so many enemies, because dictators of varying stripes, authoritarians of varying stripes, don't like that. They don't believe in journalism. They believe in state-run media. They believe that they and they alone have truth. So again, Soros is accused of being a destabilizer. Well, if presenting honest facts through real journalism destabilizes the hold of a dictator, well, yes, he's guilty of that. That's what we want, though. If you actually believe in democracy, you should be praising that. Now, this fits a pattern of Trump where he simply says, because I don't like you, because you don't support me, you should go to jail. He said that about Hillary Clinton. There's no evidence Hillary Clinton has ever committed any crimes. And yet Trump is repeatedly stresses, lock her up. Now, with Trump, it's always the sense of you think, well, he doesn't really believe that. He's just saying it because it gets an applause. The problem now is his henchmen have filled the ranks of the FBI, the Department of Justice, and they quite often just start doing things. Well, that's what the boss wants. Let's do it. And that's the real danger here of constantly vilifying someone and saying they should be locked up. It also empowers nuts to try to take things in their own hands. Now, Soros is in his 90s now. He is not as high profile. I certainly don't think he's going to be giving any speeches at college campuses. He's got the wealth to be cloistered, to have personal security. I hope he lives another 90 years. I think he's one of the true patrons of democracy and a true leader, someone who's successful at really every aspect of his life. So, George Soros, I don't think you're going to prison anytime soon. Certainly hope not. More in a moment. We'll be right back after this break. Want to advertise here? You better be legit. No crypto, no junk food, no supplements. Go to tjwalker.com/advertise. Most people can't afford a full-time coach. And even if you could, good luck finding one who's available when you need them. That's why I created the TJ Walker AI clone. It's built on my 40-plus years of real-world coaching and training. You get my exact advice, style, and frameworks instantly. Ask it how to handle a tough question. Get feedback on your elevator pitch. Rehearse your next big talk. This is the next generation of communication coaching. It's smarter than an app, more personal than a course, and always ready. Start using it today at tjwalker.ai. You'll wonder how you ever did without it. Elon Musk warns of violence, but the numbers tell another story. At a far-right rally in London over the weekend, Elon Musk told the crowd, "Violence is coming. You either fight back or you die." He went further, calling the left the party of murder and accusing them of celebrating Charlie Kirk's assassination. But the evidence runs in the opposite direction. Data from the Anti-Defamation League, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, and other trackers show that the vast majority of politically motivated killings in America over the past 3 decades come from the far right. Since the Oklahoma City bombings in 1995, right-wing extremists have been responsible for well over 2/3 of all ideological murders. Left-wing extremists, by contrast, account for only a small fraction. Recent years are even starker. Between 2022 and 2024, every single political killing recorded in the U.S. was carried out by, you guessed it, right-wing extremists. Now, Musk's warning may stir a crowd, but the data contradicts his claim. Okay, so let's take a look at what's really going on here. Elon Musk has lost his mind, stirring up hatred's passion, saying, "We're going to have a war, and it's because the far left are out to kill you," is absolute insanity. The vast majority More than 2/3 of all politically motivated killings in America come from those who are part of the far right. There are some years when 100% of politically motivated killings are attributed to people who are part of the far right. So rather than demonize more people on the left, why not start and clean up your own house, Elon? Let's go a little deeper here. Again, some of you are going to listen to this and you're going to say, well, TJ said nobody on the left ever killed. No, that's not what I said. So let's be very clear about it. There are nuts, there are idiots, there are murderers all across the political spectrum, far left, far right, non-ideological, libertarian, commies, Green Party. They're extremists at every political party and at every little step along an ideological spectrum. No one of any ideology is immune from having a murderer within their midst. Okay? But now we're in a situation where we have partisan actors like Musk who simply say, okay, this horrible thing has happened. I don't like debating facts with my political opponents. I just want to smear them and say, they're all such horrible people. They're all so murderous. We don't even have to look at their policy proposal on the environment or health care or transportation. We don't have to look at facts anymore. We can just dismiss them all as crazed murderers. That's how democracies end. That's how civil wars begin. And Musk is talking about, oh, you better be ready. There is a civil war. Well, not necessarily if people like you weren't out fomenting nonsense, hatred, bigotry, and demagoguery. So again, I'm going to share with you some of the facts. Since 1995, and I well remember, the day Timothy McVeigh murdered more than 100 people, right-wing extremist, and that was 30 years ago. In 2022, 2024, according to the most recent statistics, 100% of political killings were committed by right-wing actors. Funny how everyone seems to have forgotten that a Democratic member of the legislature in Minnesota was gunned down and brutally murdered in her own home, and her husband was nearly murdered by a right-wing extremist. Somehow they don't get to win the Presidential Medal of Freedom. No, they get forgotten and swept away. So again, I'm not here telling you anyone who has a political belief, right of center, is a murderer. Any MAGA supporter is a murderer. I'm not telling you that. I need you to be skeptical of anyone who does say that, although I haven't heard that. But you need to be really skeptical of an attention junkie like Elon Musk and a certain great orange one in Washington who realizes the easiest, fastest applause line, the easiest way to get a like, the easiest way to get a share is to say this horrible thing happened because of this political belief system over here, even though it's unrelated. That's the easiest way to get likes, shares, and more attention, but it's complete demagoguery. That's it for our main topics of the day. I do want to talk to you about a couple of other issues today. We're going to switch into our grab bag section of the show. But before we do, a little housekeeping matters. We are a brand new show. So if you're listening to this on any podcasting platform, it would be really helpful if you could leave a rating, a star rating, if that platform gives it to you. If you can leave a couple of sentences of what you like, that would be helpful. If you are watching this on YouTube, on TikTok, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Twitch, or any other platform, please leave a comment. Subscribe if the platform allows you to subscribe. And share it. Sign up for notifications. Any engagement is good, especially as the show is brand new. So I do want to thank you for that. Okay. There's something I didn't even want to put a spotlight on it. So I didn't talk about this in the main section of the show. If you're here with me now, that tells me you're a pretty thoughtful person. And I'm not turning this into a standalone short form video. I'm not trying to get clicks, but it's something that has to be said. What we are seeing in the country right now is in the United States is a conflating of issues. Yes, it's an absolute atrocity that Charlie Kirk was assassinated. But we've had some people say, yes, condolences to him. It's an atrocity. It shouldn't have happened. Sympathies to the family. And then say, before we get too carried away lionizing him, giving him presidential medals of honor, let's take a minute and look at his career. And they then talk about the numerous wildly hateful things Charlie Kirk has said throughout his career. And I'll let you Google those yourself. I didn't want to get into that. And what we're seeing is those people are losing their jobs. They are being characterized as someone laughing at the death and celebrating the death. I defy you to show me one prominent elected official in the Democratic Party, one prominent member of the so-called liberal media, one prominent academic, a serious person who's actually cheered on this horrible atrocity, this assassination. Because I haven't seen it. What I have seen is right-wing extremists simply proclaiming that all the Democrats are cheering this on, that all the leftists are cheering this on and adding fuel to the fire and mocking the death. I haven't seen it. So give me evidence. What I have seen is a new form of right-wing wokeism, right-wing political correctness coming in, where if someone says the appropriate thing, my condolences, this is awful, this shouldn't have happened, this person's terrible. And let's take a moment to look at some of the things this guy said throughout his career that are extraordinarily demeaning to women, to blacks, to anyone who isn't white, to anyone who isn't Christian. By simply stating facts, they have been demonized. They have been vilified, and they're being lied about. Now, are there some people in the world who cheered on Charlie Kirk? Yes. They're not Democratic elected officials, and they are not members of the mainstream media who have any sort of respect or clout. I don't care who you are. Anyone who is attacked brutally in public, whether it leads to death or not, and I call for all of this to stop. I hope it never happens again. But there's always going to be some nutcase cheering it on, saying exactly the wrong thing at the wrong time. But you can't simply say that defines an entire political party or an entire spectrum of thought. Because anytime someone is injured, you can look all the way across the political spectrum and find some imbecile, some idiot, some moron on Twitter cheering it on. And it isn't meaningful. I'm sure that if there were Twitter on the back in the days when JFK was assassinated, there would be some Republican saying, great, he was a horrible guy. Would it have then been fair to say, well, all Republicans are in favor of assassination of Democrats? No, that would not be fair. That wouldn't be honest. But that's essentially what we're getting right now. Now, would it have been fair for someone to have said, my condolences to the Kennedy family. I abhor violence. I hope we never have any more political assassinations. Let's look at the Kennedy record now. And I don't like the fact that he bungled the Bay of Pigs, let's say. And the person's then fired from a job because they were seen as celebrating the assassination of Kennedy. That would be crazy. And that's essentially what we have right now. Matthew Dowd, a former contributor to MSNBC, did not jump up and down and celebrate the death of Charlie Kirk. He just didn't. He didn't celebrate. He didn't laugh at it. He expressed condolences to the family. He said it was a horrible thing. He then analyzed particular statements and actions and aspects of the ideology of Charlie Kirk and put it out there and suggested, maybe this isn't somebody we should be lionizing. We're not suggesting he deserved what happened to him. But this idea that now we all have to be a part of this right-wing woke, politically correct system whereby any criticism whatsoever of Charlie Kirk is now seen as the equivalent of celebrating the assassination. That is sheer demagoguery. It makes absolute no sense whatsoever. It's not intellectually honest. It's not fair. And it's another example of the creeping problem of right-wing wokeism affecting every aspect of our political culture in America today. And again, I shouldn't have to say it because I've said it every time. I, of course, abhor all political violence. I abhor what happened to Charlie Kirk. I send my sympathies to his family. I in no way think anything that this assassinator did is acceptable for any reason whatsoever. But yes, it is possible to have two thoughts in your head at once. You can abhor the violent activity and also have an honest discussion about someone's career, their policies, and whether or not they stoked hatred and bigotry for most of it. You can have an honest conversation about that and not be a monster. Last grab bag issue of the day. It's Monday morning. What are you doing right now? Does it make you happy? Were you happy to hop out of bed this morning? And if you're listening to this later or watching this later on demand, ask yourself, how did you feel on Monday morning when you got out of bed? Because if you are going to a job you don't like, if you're studying a field like engineering or medicine or software development and you really don't like it, you got to realize you're doing something the wrong way. Your number one job in life, yeah, you've got to feed yourself, feed your family, but at some level, you've got to give meaning to your life. And if you're doing something on a Monday morning that you hate, that also means that's kind of what you're doing for the next 5 days. If you're only enjoying life on the weekends and evenings, that's too small a percentage of your life. So I would ask you, think about it. If you're not just as excited Monday morning as you are Friday afternoon, in my humble opinion, you're living life the wrong way. I got up this morning, I hopped out of bed. I think, great, I get to spend time with you. I get to spend time with my TikTok friends. There's nothing I'd rather be doing. So I do want you to think about this. Have you chosen a career for yourself that gives you meaning, that you enjoy, that you like? And maybe if you're a manager at a hospital and you're managing lots and lots of doctors and administrators and nurses and upset patients, maybe it's not that every minute is a complete joy, but does it give you meaning knowing you are helping people? You're helping people live life or at least have meaningful end of life situations. It's not that it has to be ha, ha, ha fun and wow, you got to be a rock star, but are you doing something with your life that gives you meaning, that gives you joy, that makes you feel like you're using your talents, you're using your skills, you're challenging yourself? That's what I think gives life meaning and also makes you happier. Maybe not smile in the face, laugh, ha, 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 but I know it makes me happy to, whether I'm creating an online course or writing a new book or creating a show and interacting with thousands of people on TikTok and online and other places, it does make me happy. Doesn't mean you have to do that, but your number one job in life is you got to figure out how to live a life that helps other people and is meaningful to you. If it's just chasing a dollar, maybe you have to do it for some part of your life, but you got to think about how can you make enough money to live on and give life your own meaning. So I just wanted to end with that on this Monday. I do try to look at news stories and filter them through the lens of communication and personal development. But sometimes at the end, grab bag, we'll just hop right into personal development issues and questions as well. If you have any questions, please post them wherever you see or hear this show. I'm TJ Walker. Thanks so much. See you tomorrow.